Most people remember Sinbad's 1990s sitcom as a forgotten Fox casualty, but the show's brief run was packed with bizarre behind-the-scenes drama, unexpected celebrity cameos, and production secrets that would make your head spin. From a go-go legend composing the theme song to a future Oscar nominee getting fired after just 3 episodes, the Sinbad show harbored more peculiar mysteries than anyone realized. Fact 1. Go-Go Godfather created the theme song. When viewers tuned into The Sinbad Show in 1993, they were hearing something truly unusual for network television at the time. The sitcom's theme music was performed by Chuck Brown, a musician who had earned the nickname the Godfather of Go-Go for creating and popularizing an entire music genre that most Americans had never heard of. Go-Go music was born in Washington, D.C. during the mid-1970s, and Chuck Brown was the driving force behind its creation. This unique style blended funk, jazz, hip-hop, blues, soul, R&B, and dancehall music into something completely new, characterized by its continuous beat and call-and-response vocals that kept audiences dancing all night long. Brown's signature guitar was a blonde Gibson ES-335, and his band, the Soul Searchers, had created legendary tracks like Bustin' Loose that became anthems in the nation's capital. The choice to hire Chuck Brown for a Fox sitcom theme was remarkable because Go-Go remained almost exclusively a Washington, D.C. phenomenon in the early 90s. While the music had a massive, devoted following in the D.C. area, it had barely penetrated mainstream American culture or television. Most viewers outside of the Mid-Atlantic region would have been completely unfamiliar with Brown's style or his legendary status in the Go-Go community. This made The Sinbad Show one of the first major network television programs to feature go-go music, giving Chuck Brown's distinctive sound national exposure to millions of households across America. The collaboration represented a bold creative decision that brought a deeply regional musical tradition to primetime television, introducing audiences nationwide to the rhythmic complexity and infectious energy that had made Chuck Brown a local legend in Washington, D.C. for nearly 2 decades. Fact 2. Salma Hayek was fired after 3 episodes. Future Academy Award nominee Salma Hayek experienced one of her earliest Hollywood disappointments when she was abruptly written out of The Sinbad Show after appearing in only 3 episodes as Gloria Contreras. What makes this situation particularly unusual is that Hayek wasn't hired as a guest star or recurring character, but was actually cast as a series regular with starring billing whenever she appeared on screen. At the time, Hayek was still establishing herself in American television after moving from Mexico, where she had achieved fame starring in the telenovela Teresa from 1989 to 1991. She was working hard to break into Hollywood despite facing significant challenges, including limited English fluency and dyslexia, which led her to enroll in English lessons and study acting under the renowned teacher Stella Adler. The decision to remove Hayek's character came down to the producers determining that Gloria Contreras was unnecessary to the show's central storylines. Network executives and writers concluded that her character served no essential purpose in the family dynamics between Sinbad's character David and the 2 foster children he was raising. This type of mid-season character elimination was relatively uncommon for someone who had been given series regular status and promotional materials. Hayek didn't take the dismissal quietly, and her frustration extended beyond just losing this particular job. She appeared on a Spanish-language talk show around the same time and spoke passionately about the broader problem of limited opportunities for Latina actresses in American television and film. During this interview, she expressed her disappointment with an industry that seemed to offer very few meaningful roles for performers of her background, describing how casting directors would often tell her that her accent would make audiences think of housekeepers rather than leading characters. Fact 3. Ray J got his break. Before Brandy, Ray J landed his breakthrough role on The Sinbad Show when he was just 12 years old, playing L.J. Beckley throughout all 24 episodes of the sitcom's single season. What makes this casting particularly interesting is that it gave Ray J, whose real name is Willie Ray Norwood Jr., his first major acting credit before his older sister Brandy. achieved massive fame as a recording artist and television star. During the early 1990s, neither Norwood sibling was yet a household name, though both were already working in the entertainment industry. Ray J's role as the street-smart older foster child on The Sinbad Show established him as an individual performer with his own identity, rather than simply being known as the younger brother of a more famous sibling. This early television exposure allowed audiences to get to know Ray J as LJ Beckley, a character who dealt with typical teenage issues like school, friendships, and girls while adjusting to life with his new foster father. The timing proved significant for Ray J's career trajectory because Brandy's breakout album wouldn't be released until 1994, and her starring role in the UPN sitcom Moesha wouldn't begin until 1996. This meant that for a brief period, Ray J was actually the more recognizable Norwood family member on television, appearing weekly in prime time on a major network while his sister was still developing her music career. Fans of the show from that era remember Ray J as a talented young actor who brought energy and authenticity to the role of LJ, creating a character that felt genuine rather than like a typical sitcom kid. His performance on The Sinbad Show demonstrated his natural charisma and screen presence, qualities that would serve him well throughout his later career in music, reality television, and entrepreneurship. Fact 4. Video game designer was ahead of its time. The writers of The Sinbad Show made an remarkably prescient decision when they chose to make David Bryan a video game designer, a career that was considered highly unusual and niche for a television character in 1993. At the time the show aired, the video game industry was still largely viewed as a hobby for children and teenagers rather than a legitimate entertainment business that could support a successful adult lifestyle. In the early 90s, most Americans still thought of video games as simple arcade diversions or basic home console entertainment like Super Mario Bros. Or Pac-Man. The idea that someone could make a comfortable living designing games was foreign to mainstream audiences who were more familiar with traditional creative careers like advertising, graphic design, or television production. Most sitcoms of that era featured characters with conventional jobs like doctors, lawyers, teachers, or small business owners, making David Bryan's profession genuinely groundbreaking for network television. The show's creators were essentially looking several years into the future without realizing it, as the video game industry would explode into a multi-billion-dollar business throughout the mid to late 90s. Companies like Sony would launch the PlayStation in 1995, and games would become increasingly sophisticated, leading to the massive tech boom that would transform Silicon Valley and create countless millionaire programmers and designers. David Bryan's character was portrayed as a successful, financially stable bachelor who could afford a nice apartment and support 2 foster children on his video game designer salary. This depiction suggested that gaming could be a viable, respectable career path at a time when most parents were still telling their children to stop playing games and focus on real work. The show inadvertently predicted how the tech industry would reshape American culture and create entirely new categories of professional success. Fact 5. Jazz legend Nancy Wilson played Sinbad's mother. The Sinbad Show featured one of the most accomplished musical artists of the 20th century in a recurring television role when Grammy Award-winning jazz vocalist Nancy Wilson appeared as Louise Bryan, the mother of Sinbad's character David. Wilson, who was known for classic songs like Guess Who I Saw Today, and her distinctive style as a song stylist, appeared in 10 episodes throughout the show's single season, making this one of her most substantial acting commitments on television. Nancy Wilson had already established herself as a legendary performer by the time she joined The Sinbad Show, with a career spanning over 5 decades and more than 70 albums to her credit. She had won her first Grammy Award in 1964 for Best Rhythm and Blues recording with the album How Glad I Am, and was widely respected in both jazz and popular music circles for her ability to blend different musical genres seamlessly. Her smooth, expressive voice and sophisticated stage presence had made her a favorite of audiences and critics alike since the late 1950s. While Wilson had made guest appearances on various television programs throughout her career, including shows like I Spy, Hawaii Five-0, The Cosby Show, and Room 222. Her role as Louise Bryan represented a more substantial acting commitment than her typical one-off appearances. The casting brought serious musical credibility to the show and created an interesting dynamic where a real-life entertainment legend was playing the fictional mother of a comedian who was himself becoming a major television star. Wilson's participation in the sitcom demonstrated her versatility as a performer and her willingness to explore different aspects of the entertainment industry beyond her primary identity as a recording artist and concert performer. Fact 6. Jesse Jackson protested its cancellation. The cancellation of the Sinbad show in April 1994 became part of a much larger controversy when civil rights leader Jesse Jackson accused Fox Broadcasting of institutional racism and called for a boycott of the network. Jackson's protest wasn't just about Sinbad's sitcom alone, but rather the simultaneous cancellation of several shows featuring predominantly black casts, including Rock, South Central, and In Living Color, all of which were eliminated from Fox's lineup around the same time. Jackson argued that the pattern of cancellations demonstrated racial bias in the network's decision-making process, particularly since some of these shows had been successful and culturally significant. In Living Color, for example, had been a groundbreaking sketch comedy series that launched the careers of numerous performers, including Jim Carrey and the Wayans brothers. The show Rock tackled serious social issues affecting African-American communities, while South Central dealt with urban life in Los Angeles. Fox executives strongly denied Jackson's accusations, maintaining that all programming decisions were based purely on ratings, performance, and advertising revenue, rather than racial considerations. The network pointed out that shows like Martin and Living Single, which also featured predominantly black casts, remained on the air because they were performing better in the ratings. Network representatives argued that television was ultimately a business, and shows that couldn't attract sufficient audiences or advertising dollars would be canceled regardless of their cast composition. The controversy highlighted ongoing tensions in the television industry about representation and diversity in programming during the early 1990s. Jackson's boycott call reflected broader concerns within the African-American community about limited opportunities for black performers and creators in mainstream television, as well as questions about who made programming decisions and what factors influenced those choices beyond simple ratings numbers. Fact 7. 2 episodes. Never aired. The Sinbad show holds the unusual distinction of having 2 completely finished episodes that were never broadcast on television, creating a small mystery in sitcom history. The production team had filmed a total of 26 episodes during the show's single-season run, but Fox only aired 24 of them before announcing the cancellation on April 21, 1994. This situation was relatively uncommon in television production, where networks typically aired all completed episodes of a canceled series either during the regular season or as summer programming to fill empty time slots. The fact that Fox chose not to broadcast these final 2 episodes suggests that the cancellation decision came suddenly, possibly while the episodes were still in post-production or had just been completed. The content and storylines of these lost episodes remain completely unknown to the public, as no detailed episode summaries, plot descriptions, or behind-the-scenes information about them has ever been released. There are no available records indicating what specific situations David Bryan and the foster children would have faced, which guest stars might have appeared, or what family dynamics would have been explored in these unaired installments. The mystery deepens because these episodes represent completed work by the entire cast and crew, including performances by Sinbad, Ray J, Aaron Davis, and T.K. Carter that audiences have never seen. Unlike some television productions where unaired episodes eventually surface years later through DVD releases, syndication packages, or streaming services, these 2 episodes of The Sinbad Show have remained completely inaccessible to viewers for over 30 years. The existence of these lost episodes has become a piece of television trivia that highlights how quickly network decisions could affect completed creative work during the 1990s, when shows could be canceled with little regard for finishing out their produced content. Fact 8. T.K. Carter was a horror movie veteran. T.K. Carter, brought an unexpectedly diverse acting background to his role as Clarence Hull on The Sinbad Show, having already established himself as a memorable character actor in one of the most acclaimed horror films of the 1980s. 11 years before appearing as Sinbad's loyal best friend, Carter had delivered a standout performance as Knowles, the roller skating chef, in John Carpenter's science fiction horror masterpiece, The Thing, from 1982. In The Thing, Carter played a much different type of character than the cheerful, comedic Clarence Hull that audiences knew from the sitcom. Knowles was a slightly nervous cook working at an isolated Antarctic research station who becomes increasingly paranoid as an alien creature infiltrates and imitates the human crew members. The role required Carter to convey genuine terror and suspicion, while navigating the claustrophobic atmosphere that made Carpenter's films so effective, and his performance included the memorable detail of his character wearing roller skates while working in the kitchen. Carter's work in The Thing had made him recognizable to horror and science fiction fans, as the film developed a strong cult following despite initially receiving mixed reviews upon its release. His ability to shift from the intense, survival-focused atmosphere of a John Carpenter thriller to the lighthearted family dynamics of a Fox sitcom demonstrated his range as a performer and his comfort working in completely different genres. The contrast between these two roles highlights how Carter successfully navigated between dramatic and comedic acting throughout his career. While Clarence Hull was an easygoing character who provided comic relief and friendship advice to Sinbad's character, Knowles was fighting for survival against an otherworldly threat, showcasing Carter's versatility as an actor who could adapt to vastly different storytelling requirements and audience expectations. Fact 9. Sinbad's real name inspired his character. The writers of The Sinbad Show created an unusually personal connection between the comedian and his fictional character by incorporating key details from his real identity into the show's storyline. Sinbad's actual first name is David Adkins, and his longtime nickname among friends and family has always been Red, both of which became central elements of his television character David Bryan, who was also called Red by those close to him. This decision to blur the lines between the performer's real identity and his fictional role created an interesting dynamic where Sinbad was essentially playing a version of himself with a different last name and career. The choice to use his actual first name meant that when other characters called him David on screen, it felt natural and authentic, rather than like he was acting, since that was genuinely what people called him in real life. The nickname Red added another layer of personal authenticity to the character, as this was how Sinbad's actual friends and family members addressed him outside of his professional entertainment career. The show's writers incorporated this detail into episodes where David Bryan's parents, or longtime friends, would refer to him as Red, creating moments that felt genuinely intimate and realistic rather than scripted. This approach was relatively uncommon in sitcom development during the early 1990s, when most shows created entirely fictional identities for their star performers. By using elements of Sinbad's real name and personality, the show created a sense that audiences were getting to know the actual person behind the stage name, rather than watching him portray a completely separate character. The decision also made the show feel more autobiographical and personal, as if viewers were seeing how Sinbad might actually behave in the domestic situations that David Bryan faced as a foster father learning to raise two children. Fact 10. The show drew from Sinbad's real custody battle. The Sinbad Show's central storyline about a bachelor suddenly learning to raise children wasn't purely fictional, as Sinbad was experiencing remarkably similar challenges in his own personal life during the exact same period. Around the time the show premiered in September 1993, Sinbad had recently been awarded joint custody of his two children from his marriage to Meredith Fuller, 4-year-old Royce and 7-year-old Paige. This timing created an unusual situation where Sinbad was simultaneously portraying a fictional foster father on television while navigating the real-world complexities of single parenting in his own home. He openly discussed with reporters how his actual experiences raising his children directly influenced his performance on the show, explaining that many of the parenting challenges his character David Bryan faced were drawn from situations he was encountering with Royce and Paige. Sinbad told the press that these personal experiences informed his understanding of single parenting and helped him bring authenticity to the role that might have been missing if he had been portraying a completely unfamiliar situation. He spoke passionately about wanting to counter negative stereotypes about African American fathers, stating that he was tired of hearing criticism about black men not taking responsibility for their children. The comedian used his platform on the show and in interviews to emphasize that many African American fathers were actively involved in raising their kids, contrary to widespread misconceptions in the media. He frequently mentioned that he had grown up with a great father, and that most of the men he knew were dedicated parents working hard to support their families. This personal connection between Sinbad's real life and his television role added genuine emotional depth to the show's family dynamics, and made his character's learning curve as a parent feel more realistic and relatable to audiences. Fact 11. It aired between two comedy legends. The Sinbad show occupied what should have been one of the most advantageous time slots in all of television when it aired at 8:30 p.m. on Thursday nights, positioned directly between two of the most groundbreaking and influential comedy series of the 1990s. The show followed The Simpsons at 8 o'clock and preceded In Living Color at 9 o'clock, creating a comedy block that represented some of the most innovative and popular programming on Fox during that era. The Simpsons had already established itself as a cultural phenomenon by 1993, revolutionizing animated television and attracting both children and adults with its sophisticated humor and social commentary. The show was consistently delivering strong ratings and had become appointment television for millions of viewers who made sure to be home on Thursday nights to watch the Simpson family's latest adventures. Following The Sinbad show, In Living Color provided cutting-edge sketch comedy that launched the careers of performers like Jim Carrey, Jamie Foxx, and the Wayans brothers, while pushing boundaries with its edgy humor and diverse cast. The show was known for its fearless approach to social issues and its willingness to tackle controversial topics that other programs avoided, making it a perfect complement to the irreverent tone that The Simpsons had established. This programming sandwich should have provided The Sinbad show with a built-in audience of comedy fans who were already tuned to Fox and invested in staying for the entire evening's entertainment. The lead-in from The Simpsons meant that viewers were already watching the network, while the anticipation for In Living Color should have encouraged people to stick around through Sinbad's sitcom rather than changing channels, creating an ideal environment for building and maintaining audience loyalty that unfortunately couldn't overcome the show's other challenges. Fact 12. Ice Cube made a mysterious guest appearance. One of the more intriguing aspects of the Sinbad show's brief run is the documented appearance of rapper and actor Ice Cube as a guest star, though the specific details surrounding his role have become something of a television mystery. According to cast and crew records, Ice Cube did appear on the show during its single season, but information about which episode featured him, what character he played, or what the storyline involved has proven surprisingly difficult to track down through conventional sources. This guest appearance would have represented an early foray into television acting for Ice Cube, who was primarily known in 1993 as one of the founding members of the groundbreaking rap group N.W.A., and as a solo recording artist. At the time the Sinbad show was airing, Ice Cube had just begun exploring acting opportunities, having appeared in John Singleton's acclaimed film Boys in the Hood in 1991, which established him as a serious dramatic performer beyond his music career. The timing of Ice Cube's appearance on the show would have been particularly interesting given that he was transitioning from his hardcore rap persona to more mainstream entertainment projects. His presence on a family-friendly Fox sitcom would have represented a significant shift in how audiences might perceive him, moving from the controversial political commentary of his music to the lighter, more accessible world of network television comedy. The lack of detailed information about his specific role adds an element of mystery to the show's guest star lineup, especially since other celebrity appearances on The Sinbad show are well documented. Whether Ice Cube played himself, a fictional character, or appeared in a cameo role remains unclear. making this one of the more elusive pieces of trivia associated with the series. Fact 13. The show tackled controversial Jerry Springer-style topics. The Sinbad show ventured into surprisingly adult territory, with an episode that featured David and his best friend Clarence, both appearing as guests on a controversial daytime talk show, competing against each other for the romantic attention of the same woman. This storyline was remarkably bold for a family-friendly sitcom that aired during prime time in 1993, especially considering that the show was designed to appeal to both children and parents watching together. The episode's premise directly referenced the emerging trend of sensationalized daytime television that was becoming increasingly popular during the early 90s. Shows like The Jerry Springer Show, which had launched in 1991, were beginning to feature more outrageous personal conflicts and relationship drama, often involving guests who would argue, compete, or even fight over romantic partners in front of a studio audience. By incorporating this type of talk show format into a sitcom storyline, The Sinbad Show was commenting on the cultural phenomenon of people willing to air their personal business on national television for entertainment purposes. The episode showed David and Clarence being convinced by an attractive woman who worked as a producer on this fictional talk show to appear as guests, presumably to create dramatic television content around their rivalry for her affections. This narrative choice demonstrated that the show's writers were willing to tackle contemporary social issues and media trends, even when those topics might seem inappropriate for a series that featured young children as main characters. The storyline required the adult characters to navigate the awkward situation of competing publicly for romance while maintaining their friendship, creating comedy from a premise that reflected the increasingly exhibitionist nature of American television culture during that era. Fact 14. Sinbad created his own production company for the show. The experience of working on The Sinbad Show inspired the comedian to take greater control over his entertainment career by establishing his own production company called David Goliath Productions in 1995, just 1 year after his sitcom was canceled. The company was strategically located in Studio City, California, placing it in the heart of the television and film industry, where Sinbad could develop new projects and maintain his presence in Hollywood. The name David Goliath Productions represented a clever play on both Sinbad's real identity and his professional persona, creating a company title that worked on multiple levels. The David portion obviously referenced his actual first name, David Adkins, while Goliath connected to his stage name Sinbad, which he had chosen years earlier in admiration of the legendary sailor from Arabian Nights stories. The biblical reference to David versus Goliath also suggested the idea of an underdog taking on larger, more established entertainment companies. This naming choice reflected Sinbad's understanding of his position in the entertainment industry as someone who had achieved significant success, but was still competing against much larger production companies and networks. The David and Goliath metaphor implied that his smaller, independent company could still create quality content and compete effectively against major studios by being more nimble and creative. The formation of David Goliath Productions demonstrated that Sinbad had learned valuable lessons about the business side of television during his experience with The Sinbad Show. Rather than simply being a performer hired by other producers, he wanted to have more creative and financial control over future projects, allowing him to develop content that aligned with his vision and values as an entertainer. Fact 15. The show earned Sinbad a Kids' Choice Awards nomination. The Sinbad Show received an unexpected honor when Sinbad was nominated for Favorite Television Actor at the 1995 Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, proving that the sitcom had made a lasting impression on its young audience, despite being canceled nearly a year earlier. This nomination was particularly meaningful because it came directly from the votes of children and teenagers who had watched the show during its brief run on Fox. The Kids' Choice Awards represented one of the few major entertainment ceremonies where children had complete control over the nominations and winners, making Sinbad's recognition a genuine reflection of how young viewers felt about his performance as David Bryan. The fact that kids remembered the show fondly enough to nominate him months after it had disappeared from television demonstrated that The Sinbad Show had successfully connected with its intended family audience even if it couldn't attract sufficient adult viewers to satisfy network executives. This posthumous recognition highlighted an interesting disconnect between the show's commercial failure and its actual impact on viewers. While Fox had determined that the series wasn't generating adequate ratings to justify its continued production, the Kids' Choice Awards nomination proved that the show had genuinely resonated with the demographic it was designed to reach. Children had clearly appreciated Sinbad's warm comedic portrayal of a man learning to become a father figure to two foster children. The nomination also reflected Sinbad's broader appeal to young audiences during the mid-1990s, as he was simultaneously building a reputation as a family-friendly comedian through his stand-up specials and film roles. His ability to entertain children while addressing serious topics like foster care and single parenting had created a lasting impression that extended beyond the show's brief television run.